Hey everyone, welcome to my channel Life of Pap, episode 2. And today I'm going to be talking about a really important subject if you suffer from ulcerative colitis or Crohn's, and that is all about diet and specifically foods you should not eat. It is so important. It's made a drastic difference in the way that I manage my disease. The most frustrating part about it is that your GI or your Western medicine doctor is not going to tell you that diet matters. Actually, my GI, who I had mentioned in my previous episode about my journey, he was actually a specialist on the West Coast, and he told me specifically, diet doesn't matter. You're never going to control this disease through diet, as if almost like you shouldn't even try to manage your disease through diet. So that's totally wrong. It's totally false. The problem with our system is that medical doctors cannot actually give you this advice. It goes against their practice, and it can actually challenge their license if they start advising you around food and diet. They can really only advise you around specific stuff that has to do with medicine and results of actual proven studies. So with that said, I realized when I was super sick that my answer from the GI was not the only answer in terms of medication would rule my life, and that was the only way I was going to manage this disease. As I mentioned in my previous episode, when my disease got really bad, my flare got so bad to the point of almost being hospitalized, which I'm sure many of you deal with, and I just empathize so much with you, that you're in just a place for desperation as I was. And I, luckily had a great resource, a friend that urged me to see a naturopath. And I felt really hesitant just because I'm like, am I really going to get answers that I need to manage this disease? Because I had, seen this specialist. He told me there's no way you can manage this disease through food. So anyway, I was really hesitant to see a naturopath and if they could help me, but I was desperate for a change. At that point, I was flaring to the point of probably going to the bathroom 30 times a day, filling the toilet with blood every time I went to the bathroom. So much pain. I think I went 4 days without eating anything because I was in so much pain, as a lot of you are right now. So I want to get this message out there and just relay to you how important diet is. And I hope that you're willing to make the changes. I know they're really big changes, like change your life around changes in terms of diet. And that's one of the hardest things to be disciplined in, but it's really worth it because it makes just such a significant change in your body. And I also ended up losing about 70 pounds so far through my journey. So I had always struggled to lose weight, and making these diet changes was somewhat of a silver lining in my journey because it helped me really manage my disease, helped me get out of a full-on flare, which was such a blessing. And I've lost 70 pounds. So that part of it is awesome. But it is, I recognize, a huge, huge change to make. But like I said, it is so, so worth it. So I want to kind of jump into the different foods that you should totally avoid if you have ulcerative colitis or Crohn's, and then how I came to know this information. So I've seen 3 naturopaths at this point. And the first naturopath that I saw was awesome in terms of she really helped me understand the significance of diet. And we did some initial testing of like, okay, these are the foods you should avoid and the foods you can eat. And that specific test was called a food intolerance test. So it's different than a food allergy test. It's specifically showing you like what food your body has like an inflammatory response to. And since IBD is an inflammatory disease, this is super significant. So number 1, the main food that you absolutely should not eat, which you've probably already heard, is gluten. So basically wheat and any form of it. So flour, full grain, you want to completely avoid gluten. So say bye-bye to bread. That's one of the hardest things to cut out. Gosh, and you will start realizing once you try to cut out gluten is that gluten is in like so many different things that you don't even realize it's in. So that was kind of one of the mistakes that I made going through this journey, is that gluten is in a lot of things. So you have to be really specific, reading labels, ingredients on everything that you buy, and even checking with restaurants on everything that you order, because gluten can be hidden in things like soy sauce, It's actually hidden in imitation crab. So for a while I was eating sushi and I thought, oh, this is fine. You know, there's crab and avocado, and actually that's not good because imitation crab is full of gluten. So I had no idea about that. But mainly these foods that I'm going to talk about, the reason why we shouldn't eat them is because your body doesn't know how to break them down. And so because it is challenged in breaking it down, it lacks the enzymes to break them down. It basically has an immediate inflammatory response, which makes your flare worse, or it triggers a flare, or basically you're just not going to be able to manage your disease if these foods are still in your diet. So if your goal is to manage it in a healthy way and through diet, and not be on really dangerous medication like immunosuppressants and steroids the rest of your life, it's time to get very real about your diet. I know it's tough. So gluten is the number one thing. The number two thing is dairy. And that's obviously another super hard thing to cut out of your diet, but it's so worth it. And actually you'll be really surprised because at a certain point, you actually don't really miss dairy or gluten. Your body just kind of, it becomes your new norm and you don't really crave it like you used to when you were eating it all the time. So number one, gluten. Number two, dairy. Dairy isn't obviously a hidden ingredient as much as gluten, but it is in a lot of gluten-free stuff. So like if you're trying to buy something that's, you know, doesn't contain gluten, you still want to make sure you're reading the ingredient list because it most of the time will contain dairy. So something to watch out for. I know the cheese is hard to cut out along with milk and all the other yummy ice cream things that you could eat, but I'm telling you it's worth it if you cut out dairy. The third thing is corn. So corn is a major like inflammatory causing food because as most of you know, corn is not really like the original grain that we used to eat, right? It's been genetically modified a ton, overproduced, the way it's harvested, including gluten is the same problem, that your body just can't break down corn. So its immediate response is, this is not good for me, it's not nutritious, it's a bad thing for me. So your body has that inflammatory response. So the hard thing with that is that if you're going gluten-free, corn is a really easy substitute when you're eating like tacos and, you know, all this other stuff that you can get made with corn like chips, but it's not a good thing for you to eat. So I would totally X out that in addition to dairy and gluten. The fourth thing is sugar. That's like one of the absolute, if you take anything away from this, sugar is one of the absolute worst things that you can eat while you suffer from ulcerative colitis and Crohn's. I 100% recommend cutting out every little bit of sugar in your diet and you will see some major changes, including the dairy and the gluten and the corn. So sugar is not necessarily, it doesn't show up as like an actual intolerance for most people. On my intolerance test, it didn't show as an actual intolerance, but sugar is a major inflammatory food. So, and we're not talking about so much natural sugars like fruit and honey and stuff like that. We're talking about like actual white sugar is just the worst thing you could eat when you are going through a flare. And fake sugars, in addition, are even worse than regular sugar. Your body has an absolute inflammatory response to fake sugar because it doesn't know what it is and can't process it. And the way that it actually goes through the colon is sometimes more dangerous than sugar. So I would not go to sugar substitutes. The only sugar substitute that is proven to be like not as detrimental to your body and that your body can somewhat do something with that doesn't have or doesn't affect your body in terms of like blood sugar is monk fruit and the pure stuff, like so monk fruit extract. Stevia for some people is okay, but it still has an effect on your blood sugar. And I'm going to talk a minute about how important blood sugar is in your diet overall and making sure that you're eating foods to manage your blood sugar, because that's a big part of this disease and managing it as well. So again, cut out all sugar, and sugar is in so many things that it's really frustrating, like ketchup. There's so much sugar in ketchup, it's crazy. I mean, sugar in pop, sugar in all these things. So just make sure that you're really aware that you're reading the ingredients. And in terms of gluten-free foods, the last thing that I want to talk about are grains and avoiding grains altogether. So I know this is hard because it's removing so many, things out of your diet that you would eat, or things that you would fall to or go to if you can't have, gluten. So I would avoid all grains altogether, because it's really hard when you have ulcerative colitis or Crohn's for your body to break down a grain. And they actually can, when you eat grains, your body can see that as gluten on a really tiny level. So if you read stories or blogs about other people that have managed their disease, they basically eat no grains. And that means like rice, oats are the main two. And even like potato flour, when you're looking at gluten-free foods, a lot of the gluten-free foods have, if you turn it on the back, you'll see like rice flour, potato flour, oat flour, and all of those things really you just want to avoid altogether, especially if you're in the midst of like a really bad flare. You really just want to be focusing on eating healthy proteins, healthy fats, and vegetables. And make sure you try to eat your vegetables cooked if you are going through a flare, because raw veggies can be hard to process. So those are some of the main foods that you want to totally avoid while you're going through a major flare. Once you've kind of managed your disease, I've heard that some people have been able to work back in grains. I specifically have still had a really hard time with grains. So I might be able to eat them once in a while when I'm definitely not flaring, but it can't be an everyday food. It really is only like a once in a while food for like rice and grains outside of, gluten, dairy, corn, and sugar. So those are the main ones. The other one that I want to mention that I was extremely intolerant to was eggs, and that was the biggest disappointment to me ever, because all of these foods I already had to immediately cut out of my diet if I had any hopes of getting past my flare. And I think I mentioned this in the last video, but I had a full-on flare for 35 days straight where I was bleeding, or when I went to the bathroom, I had a lot of blood. And I'm sure some of you can definitely relate to that, or even have had it worse than me. So like I said, I just totally empathize with where you're at. And I really hope that you'll be willing to make these changes, even though they're huge and they're definitely a major adjustment. It's done wonders for me, and I am incredibly better than I was before. So back to eggs. This was definitely a food that I was extremely intolerant to, and it totally bummed me out because I already couldn't eat all these things, and then you throw in eggs, and eggs are like one of the easiest proteins you can eat. It's in so much of, gluten-free stuff. So not saying that eggs is an intolerance for everybody, but it was an extreme intolerance for me at the time. It's probably because when I was flaring and I wasn't eating, when I did start to actually eat, I didn't really want to eat much of anything. So I ate eggs. That was like my go-to. It was an easy protein, and it just was easy for me to cook up. It had, it was healthy fat, healthy protein, and I ate so many eggs that that's probably why I ended up developing an intolerance to it during my flare. So not that this is a food that you should immediately cut out, or that I would recommend cutting out, but if you're cutting out dairy, gluten, corn, sugar, and grains, and you're still having issues with a flare, then I would recommend trying eggs, because it could be an intolerance. So as of right now, in terms of my diet, I've fully cut out dairy, gluten, corn. For the most part, sugar. I still, sometimes have sugar, but I noticed that I definitely was not eating sugar during a flare whatsoever. The times that I've tried adding sugar back in, it just has never, even if I'm managing my disease and I'm not flaring through diet, when I eat sugar, it's always a problem for me. Fruit sugars are different. Real, natural, raw honey is different. I would still recommend, if you're flaring, to only eat those fruit sugars in really small amounts, because even natural sugar while you're flaring can be have an inflammatory response. And there's a lot of details that go into why that is, that I'm going to get to in another video, but you'd want to really limit even natural sugars. So try to cut sugar completely out of your diet. And then try eggs if you're not getting anywhere with, dairy, gluten, corn, and sugar. And then lastly, I just want to talk a little bit about blood sugar and the importance of managing blood sugar and managing your disease. So when you're going through a major flare, your body, at least my body, when it was really bad, basically like thinks you're dying. You're in a severe mode of just absolute crisis that's happening in your body. And managing your blood sugar is a huge, huge part of being able to manage your disease. So one thing that I never realized, and maybe some of you out there haven't realized, is how important blood sugar is in managing that. My daily routine before I was, diagnosed with this disease and going through a major flare, and I guess even when I was initially diagnosed and I was just on medication before I realized how much diet had something to do with it, I would literally get up in the morning and I wouldn't eat until like maybe 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. And on my way to work, I would grab a coffee from Starbucks and I would grab, a breakfast sandwich from Starbucks. And if I look back now and I think, oh my gosh, what was I doing to my body during that time? It was just the worst decisions I could have made. Coffee full of sugar. And when you start cutting sugar out, you realize like how much sugar is in the normal things that we eat on a daily basis, the products that we buy, the coffees that we drink. I mean, it's just loaded with sugar. So I'd pick up a Starbucks coffee, I'd pick up a Starbucks breakfast sandwich if I was, in a hurry to work, which I have to say most of the time I was in the morning. I didn't really have like a morning routine of where I actually got up and made myself like a healthy breakfast or made healthy choices in the morning, because at least, being a loan officer, you're like always on the go, you're always busy. And I just didn't have that discipline in my life before. And it's probably because I didn't really have to have that discipline. So this diet and this disease has taught me that you just have to have a lot of discipline where you didn't have it before, which for me was a big blessing in disguise because, like I said, I've lost 70 pounds and I do work out a lot. That's a big part of my life now, but it's only a big part of my life now because I've been able to manage this disease through diet. And I was literally like shredding pounds just by literally cutting these foods out. So if you're a female or a male and you've struggled losing weight and you're dealing with this disease, I can promise you that cutting these foods out is going to make just a massive impact on your life and even your weight. So anyway, back to managing blood sugar and how important that is and making healthy choices in the morning is that you definitely want to focus on eating protein within the first hour when you wake up so that it actually starts to stabilize your blood sugar. And that was a big shift for me because, like I said, I never ate breakfast in the morning. And if I did, it was like I'm grabbing something on the way out. I might eat cereal, or I might grab, something that contains like a bunch of sugar or gluten in it, which is horrible. So some things that I just want to recommend to you that helped me big time with my disease was that when I was flaring really bad, I didn't want to eat in the morning because, as you know, like as soon as you eat something, it gives you urgency to immediately go to the bathroom. So this was a huge point of anxiety for me because I knew like I'm getting ready for work and, I have to go into work. And like I mentioned before, I'm 100% commission. My job is all about being in front of people. I live in the Northwest in a big city and there's a lot of traffic. So I never really wanted to eat something in the morning because I would literally immediately like have to go to the bathroom or be in pain in the morning. But I knew that I needed to make that change. So first off, the best thing to do when you're going through a flare, at least that I think that helped me a ton, is introducing something warm into your body versus something cold. So when I initially learned like I need to eat protein first thing in the morning, I was like, okay, well, I'll do a protein shake. Well, first of all, there's a lot of stuff wrong with protein shakes, so you have to be careful about that altogether. I wouldn't recommend doing a protein shake if you are in the middle of a flare because of all of the additives and stuff that's in there. You want to have like pretty pure protein that's easy for your body to break down. And the other thing was that it was just like an instant coldness going into my stomach, and it, for me, immediately triggered urgency to go to the bathroom multiple times before I left the house. And then I would have anxiety when I got in the car, and it was just this like ongoing vicious cycle. So something I wanted to recommend that worked great for me was I drink chicken broth in the morning, organic chicken broth, and you can do bone broth, which is actually really, really good for you too. So I would do like about a cup of organic chicken broth or bone broth in the morning, and I would put in collagen protein. So this is great because if you're cutting out dairy, you're not supposed to drink whey protein. So collagen protein from the bones, it's a really great protein. It's also really helpful just cellularly in terms of rebuilding cells and collagen and hair and all that kind of stuff, nails. So I would strongly recommend. This is a really great brand. I'm gonna see if I can zoom in here and if I'll catch the picture. But anyway, this is Vital Proteins Collagen Peptides, and I would strongly recommend this. I mix in 2 scoops into my morning broth and I just heat it up on the stove. It's 20 grams of protein, or sorry, 18 grams of protein and 20 grams of collagen. So all it is on the ingredients is collagen. That's it. There's no additives to it. And you get the immediate protein that you need in the morning. So this was a really great thing for me when I was flaring, and I still drink it in the mornings all the time because it's just an easy, warm, good tasting way to get fast and easy protein into your system. So you can find this, I'll hold it back up here. You can find this on Amazon. That's probably the easiest place to find it. That's the cheapest. You can also find it in like supplement stores. Usually you just get the best price on Amazon, so I go there. But this stuff, I swear by it, it's gonna help you a ton. And then lastly, outside of your morning routine of getting protein in first thing in the morning, at least or at most within an hour when you wake up, is making sure that you're eating your meals so many hours between. I believe it's like, I want to say 3 to 4 hours between, that you're eating like a healthy protein, a healthy fat to stabilize your blood sugar. And if anything, making sure that you for sure eat protein before you go to bed. You don't want to eat carbs right before you go to bed. You want to eat protein to stabilize your blood sugar throughout the night, and then you start the process all over in the morning. So I know that's a lot of information. Those are some huge changes that I'm recommending that you take. But like I said, this has been the biggest impact for me. There's so much more to managing this disease naturally through diet and supplements, and there's just so much more to know about it. And it is hard because it is different for everyone. There could be little things maybe that someone else is extremely intolerant to that maybe another person isn't. But I can promise you that dairy, gluten, sugar, corn, and grains are going to be like the first huge step that you're going to take toward managing this disease naturally. So I hope that you take this advice. I hope that you start implementing it right away because you're going to see huge changes as soon as you do. And I'm going to have some upcoming episodes that talk about what foods I specifically eat, just to give you guys ideas, stores that I shop at, brands of food that I love, that I swear by, that I use on a weekly basis. So hopefully that can kind of start to give you ideas. But just to leave you with this, just focus on eating natural foods, organic especially. I know organic can be expensive, but it's really important that your fruits, your veggies, your meats are organic. So I want to stress that. Do what you can. If you can't buy everything organic, try buying, the fruits and veggies that are exposed to pesticides more easily, like lettuce and apples and stuff like that. Like for example, bananas might not be as important to eat organic if you have to make that choice, but try to eat all organic and just focus on eating like a meat and a vegetable. That was like the easiest thing for me. I'm gonna also get into more about carbohydrates and how that can be a challenge while you're flaring or just managing this disease altogether. So I just leave you with, take out the foods that I mentioned and then really focus on eating natural, organic foods. So meats, vegetables is like some fruit, the easiest way to kind of break it down. Nuts are also good, better if they are like in a spread, like a sunflower seed spread. Oh, and then the last thing that I forgot to mention that I hope you paid attention to through this whole video is peanuts. That's another one that you definitely want to cut out if you can make the change Others are more important, but peanuts is a big one. So a lot of people have intolerance issues with peanuts across the board. And they're also known as more of a moldy nut. So not the best if you can choose other nuts like walnuts, pecans. I use a lot of like sunflower seed spread, which works well for me, but to each their own and what you prefer. Macadamia nuts are really good too. So anyway, please leave a comment below if you have any specific questions. I'm happy to answer them for you. And just remember, this is all just me sharing my journey with you as best that I can. Definitely, you know, I'm not telling anyone to specifically do anything, but it's just really what's worked for me. And I just really want to share that. I feel so blessed that God has carried me through this journey and that I've been able to see, you know, multiple naturopaths and that I've learned so much and that I'm in a place where I am managing this disease naturally. I still do take some medication, but we're not talking major medication. So just want to say all glory to God, and He is definitely the reason why I'm sitting in front of this camera talking to you and sharing my journey with you. So I continue to hope just putting out information that will be useful and beneficial for you guys. So yeah, like I said, comment below if you have any questions, and thanks for watching.